You look beautiful, ladies. Okay. Okay, dog. Okay. Yes, Tune, everybody get comfortable so that we can.
Go lay down. Lay down.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of our series on Unicorn Way, Justice for All. Yesterday we had technical difficulties. So part 1 is on YouTube, but the podcast didn't record. So we are thankfully have Sara in town for another day, and she was gracious enough to stop by and join us for a refilming of part 2. So as you're seeing us on YouTube, there's Petunia. We are also on our podcast on Spotify. So if you hear us kind of laughing and it doesn't make sense on the podcast, it's probably because one of the dogs has jumped up on the couch or wants something, but all dogs are welcome here at this broadcast. So we've got Annie, Petunia, Nickel, Jet, and what's his? Volt.
Volt is holding down the masculine
Yes,
for us.
yes.
He's holding it down.
So Sara is a friend of mine that I met through Airbnb, as well as Trish, that I've become like sisters with and just have an instant connection with, and so grateful that they're a part of my life. And she came my life. That could be very true as well.
Yeah.
So Trish Lacey is my business partner, my dear friend. She's my broadcasting partner. She's my all-around kind of sidekick. And Sara came into town, and we just had just wonderful conversation. And so it became very clear to us that we should sit down and just have a chit chat about things that are going on in the world, and just put our voices out there. And so this series is going to be called Justice for All. And it is very much our hope that Sara will join us regularly right now on like a Sara Says segment, because it's so refreshing to be able to voice your opinion. And we don't all have to have the same opinions. As a matter of fact, it's very important that we all have our own view on things. But that being said, it seems like right now that is very much not necessarily a safe thing to do if you're not in with the mob rule, if you have a dissenting opinion. So this series, again, is Justice for All. And this is where we want to share honest roundtable discussions, look for solutions, not buying into the divide and conquer.
Absolutely. I'll just go ahead and segue in kind of where we left off yesterday. There was a little interruption. I just kind of wrote some notes on what material we were kind of going to jump into from that point that we left off yesterday. And I was kind of we were going into BLM and how everyone would support BLM if it was just a statement. But because it's a loaded statement and there's actually an organization with its own ideology and agenda behind it, that is the part that worries me, because if it was just a statement, a proclamation, a declaration, like absolutely Black Lives Matter, and but when I even looked into it a little bit, you find out that the co-founders, the organizers, the presidents of the BLM, they are trained Marxists. They're trained in Marxist ideology and theories, and that's their word. So I wanted to kind of go into what that means and why I can't support it as a sovereign individual.
And that will be a word you'll hear a lot,
Sovereign.
used a lot, and why it is. I think I can speak for all three of us saying it's a critical element to this discussion.
Yeah, it is. Ultimately, because sovereign citizens have the right to have their own opinions and dissenting views, regardless of who or what says that they shouldn't be allowed to question something, criticize something. And so I started asking some critical questions, you know, and I think when people think critically and when people think about what it means to think critically, I think they just mean it means some sort of like deep thinking on it, but that's actually not what it means. Think of the word criticize and critical, and they have the same, you know, root word and, or the same root, and it means to ask hard and critical questions of something. So,
and that doesn't necessarily mean that by your questioning, you're criticizing or being critical of the other person's view.
no,
Like you said, Esther, we're actually needing to be critical of our own view.
of our own,
And
always,
ask our own things,
always.
like, is what I'm even saying make sense?
You
Does
should
this feel-
constantly be putting yourself in check, your
Yeah.
own ideologies in check. When somebody disagrees with you, how do you make them feel about it? I disagree with a lot of people all the time, and I usually don't try to aim to be like, make somebody feel stupid or wrong. I'm trying to find a middle ground. I'm trying to aim for peace. So if I'm bringing up stuff like the ideology behind BLM, it's because that's the root of it, and their tactics that they use are dangerous. And so we were segueing into basically, I think, just the ideology that's dogmatic and what dogma is and why it's dangerous. And when you genuinely feel morally superior over another person or group of people or color of people, or
Or
you
your
know,
pain is more
your
valid
your
than
pain is
somebody
more, yeah,
else's.
you know, we're judging everybody by how much pain they have suffered in life, and it's just one of those things
It's a
where
bad measuring stick.
Well, yeah, in the sense of entitlement that it comes with that perpetual state of victimhood. I mean,
Well, entitlement and continuing to be the victim. Because if I
Yeah.
continue to tell the story of my pain,
yeah,
and I continue to want to force you to see my pain in a way, then I'm really cementing that pain further into my psyche, into my culture, into my being, and into my whoever my personhood is.
and the sense of
So-
entitlement that, well, we hear hurt people, so you're entitled to hurt everyone around
Right,
you.
in recourse.
Yeah,
So this
like,
is-
I'm entitled to do this.
Yes,
There's
because
one,
you've hurt me, I get to turn around and do the very same action or the same gravity of an action that I say you're doing against me.
and
That's
there-
where I have a big
yeah,
problem with
and if
it.
there's one thing I've learned, for those of you that are watching, that maybe are just tuning in, I specialize in helping humans move through trauma via horse medicine. And horses have a natural fight or flight. And when we're looking, I mean, I see it playing out on the world stage. It's really just trauma playing out. And there is trauma for sure. And I would like to see every human healed from it, to be honest with you. But there is a responsibility on the individual's part
Yes.
to heal that. And there is life after trauma. And so,
and I would even say that people who have experienced a great deal of trauma and personal oppression, I'm not talking about systemic or whatever, I'm talking about people who have experienced personal trauma and oppression, and you lived through it by your own will, because you will not be defeated by this. There's something to that, and something,
There's a
Yes.
strength.
something amazing happens.
a
There's
courage,
transformation.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
empowerment.
just, yeah, the building of scar tissue, you know, it's like the heart, you know, like, damn, like how many times can your heart break? But really, it's supposed to break. Like, that's the point of it. From anything, from the death of a loved one or an intense breakup. And I tell my friends this all the time, like, even I tell myself, you know, like, let yourself feel it. Like, you're supposed to hurt. That's how you let in the empathy and the compassion for others, is by letting your heart crack all the way open, crying for days on end, experiencing loss and building that scar tissue up stronger. So then you have something to offer other people, wisdom, knowledge, even the ability to get through it and overcome, you know.
It's such a beautiful dichotomy.
I think personal responsibility is a huge part in all of this, even for myself, you know, standing up to real intolerance. And I kind of said it in the last one, if I hear somebody say a racial slur, like, I will speak out against it. I'm the person that will. I'm not just going to sit there and like, or like, get quiet. I'll be like, ew, that's ugly, or like, that's embarrassing. You sound really ignorant. It's embarrassing for you, you know, like, I will say that. And likewise, when I feel like people are being intolerant to people on the right or left, but mainly the right, that's why I'm doing this, because the people who are conservative are being hardcore demonized. And I am not conservative. I consider myself a moderate or left of center, and the spectrum has moved so far to the left that it has actually moved the entire spectrum with it. So moderates are now conservative, and people who are conservative, like my family, my mom and dad, my whole family, they're apparently Nazis, and I'm like,
Yes.
how is that? Like, they're not fascists.
That's right.
So they just picked up the board and went like this.
They're just living how they, you know, like they.
Schrodinger's window, I believe is what that's
Yeah,
called.
it's
I think that's
now I feel the need to be like, wait a second, just because I'm asking questions and I don't want to automatically jump on board with this ideology and agenda that I see being rammed through, like I'm, you know, just the whole silence is violence and all of that is not,
That's just shaming.
it's actually not helping, because then you just you create the echo chamber. I am on Instagram and I don't even like posting. I don't even really like watching people's stories anymore, because I'll scroll through and I will literally see like the same little woke meme like 100 times. All of my friends will share the same content, and I'm just like, at what point, who are you guys talking to?
We've been saying woke is joke for a while, because it's just
Woke for broke,
just
you know?
another movement to make
So,
you feel like you need to belong.
To segue into the education on communism and why I think it's important, because it's been left out of academia. Everybody knows about Hitler and the right-wing fascism that took over Europe. And, you know, everybody understands that the Nazi insignia is hateful. It strikes a sense of fear in people. And also, you know, like, you want to fight against it. It harkens on this, that that is evil and that took so many lives. So when I see the hammer and sickle flag flying at these protests and riots, because they are different things, you know, protesters protest and rioters riot.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you always, you see that hammer and sickle flag, and it really bothers me that people my age and below do not understand what communism is and how that insignia is just as hateful, if not more frightening than any Nazi insignia, because it is subversive. It is inverted, and people do not understand or make the connection that it has taken more lives than Nazi Germany could have ever even dreamed of taking, which is really saying something, you know, because everybody knows about it, and it's a great horror of the 20th century. But meanwhile, there's a whole other much larger horror that played out on the world stage and is still playing out, and nobody even, we're welcoming it.
Well, anyway, Nazi was socialist. And so communism, socialism, so it's like they all suck, and they're all coming at, well, I believe, you know, it's capitalism, and it's like capitalism has set more people free and bettered the world. And do we have true capitalism? No, we all know that's right. Corporatocracy, idiocracy at this point.
But
So,
even with our current system, flawed as it is, people are still able, by the sweat of their back and their creativity and their ingenious, their will to survive and press on, people are able to forge a path and like make it and do things. You don't have to be rich to be able to go on a little mini vacation, or even to go on a real vacation. You can save and
still have a semblance of the American dream.
we can still make ourselves better, and you do have the potential to make middle class one day. You know, like in communist countries that no, it's everyone is a giant underclass to the government, And there's a reason why communism is set up that way, and that's exactly what it creates, and it's totalitarian, it's authoritarian, and there's a book, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, it's called Warning to the West, and it was written by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and I'm going to read a passage on it. These are speeches that he gave to Washington, D.C. From June 1975 to March 1976. So this is just a little foreshadowing, and it's just, it is crazy to me that this is so relevant in 2020. So this is at the end of his second speech, and it says, he's actually speaking to union workers in this speech. That's who is at Washington, D.C. He says, I would like to call upon America to be more careful with its trust to prevent those pundits who are attempting to establish fine degrees of justice and even finer legal shades of equality, to prevent them from using the struggle for peace and for social justice to lead you down a false road. They are trying to weaken you. They are trying to disarm your strong and magnificent country in the face of this fearful threat, one which has never before been seen in the history of the world, not only in the history of your country, but in the history of the world. I call upon you, ordinary working men of America, represented here by your trade union movement, do not let yourselves become weak. Do not let yourselves be led in the wrong direction. Let us try to slow down the process of concessions and help the process of liberation.
30 years ago.
Wow. More than that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's powerful.
that was like 40 years ago. Almost. Something like that. So I just want to reread one line, and it says, I call upon America to be more careful with its trust to prevent those pundits. Who are pundits? Media pundits? People like Al Sharpton and Don Lemon.
All of them?
And all of them, even on the right, even on Fox News, they're pundits as well.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
The media
Sure.
is
Yes.
a big, the cult of personality.
Owned by
Yes. So
6 people or some crazy number.
He's calling upon people not to trust the pundits who are attempting to establish fine degrees of justice and even finer legal shades of equality. What is happening right now? Legal shades of equality. We already have that, and if you look at what's happening, they're actually rolling back segregation stuff so that people can form their own identity ethnic groups. This is dangerous shit that we're doing here. And to prevent them from using the struggle, so who's using the struggle for peace and social justice? To prevent them, who's them? The pundits. To prevent the pundits from using the struggle for peace and social justice to lead you down a false road. We are, the problem is that we are so blinded by our anger and rage and we're also, I love that it's white privilege this and white. Every single human doesn't realize how privileged they are. I am sorry, even people who live in the ghettos, and I have lived in the ghetto, like even recently in my 20s, I lived in like pretty ghetto parts. I still had running water, a toilet, I had food, I had a stove. I mean, there are literal places on earth right now where you do not have any of those things. And then even just 100 years ago, like we all have it so easy that we don't even recognize when there is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Well, and the power of the media. I mean,
and
the mind control factor.
It's not even the media. Look at all these people. It is the power. They're hungry for power as well. They want to take over the power.
Mm-hmm.
I don't trust these people with the power.
No, I prefer
and
that
it is like
everybody practice self-responsibility.
Right.
And this wasn't even a conversation.
It is the one ring, like communism and power over other people is like the Lord of the Rings, and every single person who puts it on, what does it do to them? It taints them. When you think that you have power over somebody, when you are superior to them, you feel it. I have the power. But you don't see that you are now the oppressor.
Yes.
And it is very easy to segue from wanting to attain power.
When
and
fighting
justice.
monsters, one should be very careful not to become the monster.
Yeah, for
Nietzsche.
he who stares long into the abyss stares also
right.
into him. So it is true. It is that.
As with him, so with that, as a price.
Which is why you hear a lot of talk about shadow work, and I think, I don't know where our show got cut off yesterday, but epigenetics, your own family line, your own, the trauma in your family line, break the chains. And that starts with the individual. Again, sovereignty and personal responsibility.
Personal responsibility
and
about
loving the shadows.
So,
right? Because it's not going to go away by us hating.
Some of the books that I've read, like, they really make you understand the line between good and evil, and also how easy it is to cross that line. And if you honestly cannot put yourself in the position of a Soviet soldier at a Gulag or a Nazi soldier at a concentration camp, and you genuinely think that you are not capable of becoming that person, then I will tell you that you do not know yourself, and every single human is capable.
I would even challenge that looking out on the world stage, there are massive amounts of humans that are making justifications
for
that,
and violence and physical violence. And that is the other thing about physical violence.
And in jobs that they know that there's something not right, but they're not going to quit their job because what about their family? And okay, that's what we're talking about. Like, please stop, go look in the mirror. And we talk about at True North that when you make a decision to go with your inner, internal, divine mission, divine guidance, legions of help will show up for you to help you make the transition to something better than what you're feeling and the distress that you're feeling when you look in the mirror, because you know on some level that you are miserable with what you're doing every day, and know on some level that it is wrong.
You know, and I think that I felt kind of touched personally by the cancel culture, like got into it with one of my family members, with my mom, and it was sad, you know, because one of my cousins attacked my mom on a Facebook post, and it's so stupid that I'm still the kind of person where, like, first of all, don't talk to my mom like that. You know what I mean? Second of all, like, I'm going to slap your dogmatic ideology away very easily. And she did something very silly. I replied to her comment on a thread, and she deleted it, which deleted my comment. So then she commented again, and I knew she'd do it again. So I replied again, but pasted it, like copied it. So when she tried to delete it again, I already had it saved. And it's sad. It wasn't because I'm psychic. I knew she was going to do that because I could see through her ideology. They have to control speech. When you say something to them that they can't argue, they have to delete it. They can't. That's the thing with communism. But also the thing is because the arguments are weak, they impose force. And I have a problem with people who are willing to impose force on anyone. As somebody who suffered extreme physical trauma as a child, I have a problem with physical force being put upon someone. Now, I'm the first to say that I will defend myself.
Yes.
100%. But I will never strike someone first. I am never going to initiate a physical violence against somebody because I've had it done to me so many times that I understand what a huge sovereign violation that is against a personhood. You know what I mean? So I will not ever initiate it.
You know, that really, for me, working 2008 through 12, and still, I mean, if I have to have a president, I'd still Ron Paul. Like, I learned so much. I really learned that no initiation of force or fraud. And I've worked through my own CPTSD and went through bouts of having absolute blind rage and would justify my hurt spilling onto other people. And it wasn't until I realized That's wrong. That's initiating force, and and it's no excuse that you've had trauma. You need to, lady, figure this out and heal yourself and be a better person. Because I guarantee you, I don't wake up every day and say, you know, I want to be a shittier person today.
Right.
I wake up every day, even and knowing my trauma responses. I really, now being on the other side of it, I really am able to see, and I think those of us that have healed through trauma can really have compassion and empathy for the people that we're seeing do this, but no excuse for it.
No,
I'm not going to make excuses for your behavior.
That's why my goal is to educate.
Yes.
I feel like people don't have the proper tools. You know, it was glossed over. I am a history buff. I always have been. The only AP class in high school I ever took was history AP classes, and we didn't go over communism. We didn't go over Mao in China. We didn't go over Soviet Union, Stalin. Like none of that. That shit was just glazed over. I think Stalin probably had a chapter, but it didn't mention Marx or Engels, or maybe Lenin was thrown into a paragraph, but like it is glossed over because they don't want you to know about how subversive and pervasive this ideology is and how it moves through the guise of social justice and finer shades of equality to get its foothold and start chipping away at individual sovereign civil liberties.
And it's very insulting, I think, for people to act like this mob rule, and that like if you're this
The cancel culture,
the cancel culture, and then also like you're privileged, like all these words. It's like when I think about them, it just like stop. Like I can't do anything about the color of my skin. And when people say, "Oh, I don't see skin color," bullshit. You do too. Everybody, you see it, but it's just a tone. So what I see is character.
It's a hue.
Yeah. What I see is someone's character.
Yeah.
What I see are their actions matching their words.
Matching their words.
What I see is the individual. When I see a mob rule, I just think,
I see a culture of ignorance. No
and I just see,
yeah.
Well, it's not only that. To me, it's just authoritarian. Mob rule is authoritarian. And as somebody who has always fucked authority, I mean, I've been to jail for being rude to cops. I was always grounded as a teenager. I recognize authoritarian people forcing somebody to think or feel or do something. I recognize it, and I recognize it coming out of the left. I see vitriol in people's eyes. I see a hatred, a seething. They really genuinely feel justified in this quest for social justice and peace. And the only thing I can't stress enough is that this movement is a Trojan horse. It is. There is something that is lurking behind this that is dangerous. And like I said in the first podcast, if you haven't listened to it, we are all big proponents for genuine criminal justice reform and prison reform. Like, I think from the top down,
decriminalization,
prostitution, criminal justice reform and actual legitimate programs in prisons and jails to really help rehabilitate people. So when they leave these places, they have a skill. Maybe they could be entry-level electrician or car mechanic or something. That could change somebody's life, having a trade and a way to always make money. People could get into criminality because it's the only way for them to make enough money to pay their bills and have leftover on the side. You know what I mean? So
Trish and I had both posted something on Facebook. It might have been a year ago, but it was a woman that went into prisons and dealing with trauma, and it asked the group of people, how long did you think before you committed the crime? And everybody said a fraction of a second, and their life was changed. And this is what happens with a traumatized brain. The ability to make a decision just shrinks, and it is literally a survival. See red, and it's a survival instinct that kicks in, and then you're in a constant state of, instead of your fight and flight kicking in when there's actually real danger, you just live in a constant state of unhealthy fight or flight.
And you
that's
see that happening on the world stage.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's been the conditioning, so that there is the reaction of
Yes.
that. And yes, rehabilitation in prisons would be wonderful. But the problem is prisons are now a profitability.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So
They're privatized.
that is impossible
Yeah.
when somebody's ability to make money off of people's lives
That's
being taken
what
away.
I was saying when I said prison reform, to
Right.
make it so that they're not privatized. I mean, there was this one, I think I saw here somewhere, not here, but in Arizona.
There's a couple in Arizona.
And it was like
A lot in Texas.
they dropped below 90% capacity, so the owners were like suing the prison for money because it dropped below 90%. Like that is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like that is
The court
insane.
system is set up in that way.
Yeah.
You know, with the 3
So
strikes. you're out.
but I'm a reformist. I'm not an abolitionist. I think abolishing the system, a corrupt system, and replacing it with but replacing it with a system with more room for corruption.
Right.
Because when you
Yeah.
centralize power,
Right.
it gets rid of checks and balances.
Yeah.
If there's no more separation of powers. And so while our system is obviously not perfect, because there's no such, this is what I want to try to tell people.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as perfect.
No.
Not in government, not in men,
Not in life.
life. You know, so like if you have a
Humans are
government
messy.
that can breathe and move and you can ratify it with the times, like you should fucking hold on to that with everything, because these totalitarian governments do not care about your rights. They do not care about black people, white people, gay people, trans, they do not care. There is a permanent handcuff coming, and world government,
Yeah,
global
centralized,
communism,
yeah.
that is the name of the game, and America is kind of the last stronghold. So when people try to tell me that I'm just a white girl, so my opinion doesn't matter, or I shouldn't even get a say, again, I said it yesterday, an individual's spoken truth is the only thing that matters, and there's nobody coming to save you. There's no government political party that is going to save us. If sovereign citizens don't stand up against an ideology that they don't like and say, no, I disagree, I rebuke it, I'm not going to get on board, I am going to question it, I am going to criticize it, and if that becomes a crime, we are in really big trouble.
Yeah.
We are in very big trouble, because y'all should go back and read 1984, Brave New World, read Warning to the West by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. There's a book called The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He won a Nobel Prize. He really goes deep into that book, and it is beautiful and heartbreaking, and it makes you understand the level for human joy and triumph, even in the darkest, dimmest conditions that people have probably ever experienced in life. They're still able to experience some semblance of joy, you know, and
We're so
And
resilient.
that's what
Very
humans are.
resilient.
We are here for joy.
yeah.
That is what
So seeing
birthright
somebody
is.
who lived in a gulag, and he, in his words, paraphrased, it's something along the lines of, he hasn't seen such pure happiness since leaving there, which, because it was so blissful and pure, it didn't rely on any sort of monetary or value of things and material things. It had nothing to do with that when you're in that low of a place.
Kim and I looked at each other yesterday when you said this the first time, he was following his true north.
Yeah.
Even in the midst of the challenge and
Yeah.
the tribulation and the things that were put upon him, that's why he was joyful, because he knew his purpose
Right.
on this planet, and he was sovereign and he was in serenity. And that's what we want to encourage people to find.
And then there's another book called Ordinary Men by Christopher R. Browning, and he really goes into some detail about a Nazi troop of ordinary men that turned into genocidal killers, even though they were just like normal dudes like everybody else. And it really shows you how easy it is when you feel morally justified in an ideal and you are dogmatic in your adherence to an ideology. It creates an opening for a great capacity to do great evil.
It shuts down the heart.
Yeah, it does shut down your heart. So all I have to say is that nobody is morally superior to anyone, not even a 65-year-old boomer, you know, like, you know, like, that's the thing is, it's just so weird now, and that the young people attacking the old people and destroying old culture and the history, and it's dangerous, and people don't understand the danger because they don't know the history, because it has purposely been left out. And I'm not saying that you are purposely ignorant. I'm saying that I'm challenging you to go read some new material and challenge your own confirmation biases and try to allow some new information, so maybe you can have a more well-rounded look, you know? And people might say likewise with me, but I'm actually in the echo chamber. I have to search outside of to find a different knowledge. All I see is like Trevor Noah and John Oliver. And I mean, these are the only things that are on my feed. I do watch them. I do see them. I do agree with some talking points and totally disagree with others, you know? But if you can find some common ground, that's how we need to work together. It's
Well,
not
I think
about
more people
abolishment.
want that than they want to buy into these extremes that are being put out into the polarization. That's all you see. And you watch it enough, though, a lie told enough times becomes the truth. I mean, this is mind control. And so really step back. Do yourself a favor. Unplug and step back and really
Soul search.
and not be so quick to call somebody a conspiracy theorist, or oh, they're a redneck, they're
How about just names in general? That's one thing that I can't stand.
I don't even like don't like snowflake.
No, I don't like any of
yeah.
it. Argument in the form of name calling is so ignorant
Lowbrow.
and lowbrow, and just we're resorting to name. I see it all the time.
Lazy.
Bootlicker. Oh no, I see bootlicker all the time.
Bootlicker, that's another one. I don't like sheeple.
No, yeah.
I don't like, because it just does, if anything, it just puts up a wall, and it's like, oh, you're on that side, you're on that side. No, I don't use those words.
So
I'm not on that side.
I guess, you know, like.
Yeah.
But I would rather have a bird's eye view. And when people say like form your own opinions, and what does that mean? It means like when I have these convictions, it's not because I've watched conspiracy theorists or I watch Fox News or some crazy thing like that. Like I have read books on it, and I continue to read books on it. And because I want to be armed with knowledge and facts, because that is the only ammunition that actually works to take down and dismantle a dogmatic ideology. And this is a dogmatic ideology. As much as any religion, it works like, it's like a non-theistic religion, intersectional politics.
Yeah.
It's kind of playing out right now, and I recognize it because I recognize dogma and I don't like it. So,
I think that's another thing, and it won't be the last time I refer to Dr. Ron Paul, but having done so many interviews with such brilliant people, that when you take in information, reading, and it's so powerful. Knowledge is power, so give yourself that. I know that economics isn't necessarily wasn't my favorite subject, but then once I started, oh, there's Keynesian economics, there's Austrian economics, there's like, there's so much out there that explains this game that's being played out on.
But our higher level education is only taught one form of economics, and those books are published by the upper realm of people that want us to only know one option.
Yeah, and
so well, also, I mean, capitalism has been taken over. It's been, so here's the thing is we don't have free market, true capitalism. It was taken over a long time ago. Yeah. It was hijacked. But the thing is even the hijacked version still allows for more freedom than, say, if a socialist system was hijacked. And
except for the person who feels they're oppressed by it.
Well, it creates a giant underclass to the government. Yeah. That is what socialism and communism does. Look at China, like it creates a giant underclass to one upper class. There is no middle class. It obliterates the middle class. There is no, I'm gonna live cush and well and happy and well fed, even though I'm not rich. It's just poor people and rich people, and that's it. Yeah. And you might get your your soup. You know, you might be able to line up for
Or go work in a nice, big,
For
like in
Amazon or
China
something.
where they manufacturing, but you get a dorm, you get your meals in the cafeteria, you might get a couple good apps on your phone,
Sounds kind of like Christmas.
or like a Black Mirror episode,
Yeah,
even,
like
where,
you're just
Yeah.
taking care of from cradle to grave.
and you don't really have any ideas of your own, or
They're actually
creativity.
illegal. You can't.
Yeah, then there's thought crimes, so you can start having them, and then
That's not
you get
crimes
buzzed
already
with
real,
something.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, when people start self-censoring and getting in trouble for things that like haven't even been said yet.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
Well,
that's on the horizon right now.
Trish and I have talked many times, and it seems like it's very clear to us that there's the natural timeline of man, and that's where technology works for us. I'm not a slave to technology. That's not my God. My God is my creator and natural timeline of man. And that's beautiful. Like Tesla, 369, it's all energy. So which energy are you aligning with? The natural order of
Life
and nature, or are you on an artificial timeline that would have you believe that, there's going to be just humans no longer really exist as humans. They're part of a AI integration.
I mean, yeah, you guys think that the cops are bad and stuff. What about when they start rolling out those RoboCop things? And those things are scary. Have you seen them? Like the dogs that can run.
There's no human.
Like, but that's the thing though. Like,
And who programs the computers?
This is what it's leaving it open for. It'll essentially be like a drone. It's like playing a video game at that point. I mean, when you have a real human there, I mean, everybody is fallible. Everything is imperfect. There's never going to be a perfect sort of police situation because the variables are too great. It's just, I have compassion for everybody, including police officers, and that's a very wildly unpopular and dangerous statement to make. And I don't care. I have compassion for everyone. And when
I'm not going to buy into the divide and conquer that because somebody does something for a job that I can't still know them as an individual. We've had several police officers that have booked here at my Airbnb, and they're wonderful. And I've had lots of traveling nurses, healthcare workers, teachers, just across the board, and have friends all around the world. And I can't think of ever a time where I was like, oh, you do that for a profession? Oh, you're like, yeah. Like, that's never been
I judge people on a personal level,
Yeah,
I do have a problem sometimes when you have that type A tough guy. I mean, I've gotten in it. I'm not lying. I have given attitude to cops before I've gotten arrested for resisting arrest, which is the stupidest charge ever. Still been arrested. Like, how much could I possibly have resisted,
This is gonna get me somewhere.
Yeah. And there are, again, like,
But I know,
you
like, there are
also took
type A
responsibility
I did.
for your part in that interaction.
Yes. Trust me, I know how the legal system preys on poor people, but you have to pay to play. You know what I mean? And I wanted to drive around knowing I had a traffic ticket warrant, and at the time I probably couldn't afford it.
But there's the
entitlement. There's the
of,
entitlement of,
okay.
it's not a right. It's not a right to drive. It's a privilege. Everybody knows that. And yeah, I take responsibility for my actions. I know where I messed up, and
that's where
I haven't done it. I haven't even had.
When we know better, we do better.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might take a couple more times to do the better part because you're still in the knowing better part.
Right.
And might be a sliding scale depending on the subject matter. But we're very forgiving but we're messy. And so instead of, again, joining the mob rule, and just be careful when you're fighting monsters, you don't become one yourself.
Yeah, let people think for themselves and let people have an opinion. Let people have a dissenting opinion. There's another vocab word, dissent, dissenting, breaking away, taking the path that is opposite of the main culture. You know what I mean? Like, it's dissenting away from the main
When the herd
ideology.
goes that way, be the one going that way.
And even if you don't want to be the one that goes that way, it's okay to stand still for a little while and get your bearings and read some information. Like, I would highly recommend that you do, and maybe you would have a change of heart if you kind of, I mean, this book is a very easy read. It's not even 200 pages long. It's broken up into different speeches, and it's literally like reading the future.
Because the
It's
real
so
desire for change and wanting things, like, yeah, there's definitely some real issues, but it's getting lost.
It's getting lost.
It's getting lost in all the ridiculous divide and conquer and the extremes of that.
And we're just falling for it. We're just falling for it. Like, I mean, friends, family members, like it's like casualties of war almost, you know, and I feel it. I feel pressure. I have a lot of friends in the arts district that are on the left and even side heavily with BLM. And because I don't toe the line and I don't go to the protests and I don't really I don't support it. I don't support a Marxist movement. I can't. I'm fundamentally opposed to Marxism. I don't even know how else to get that across. I am so fundamentally opposed to it. I understand the great evil that it represents, and then I look at communist countries like Vietnam and Cambodia and China and Cuba and Venezuela, and there is not one single thing that I like about those places. There's not one single thing that would make me want to move there. Cuba, I'm sure, yeah, beautiful. Some of these places, I don't want to live there. The government, And I have friends who came from Cuba who are hardcore Trump supporters. They hate communism. They hate it.
We've had several guests that have come from communist countries, and they
From
Russia, from all the Eastern Bloc, with Cuba, Venezuela, and they literally, when we get into conversations, can't grasp what's happening to us here as America and why we are, how this has even happened.
Like how this discussion is even on the
that we're even having the discussion. And then I get a lot of guests that are it's very refreshing for them to be able to be here and have a conversation that they're not going, they don't have a fear that when they speak their voice here in my house, that there's going to be judgment. And Trish has been here for some of them, where they literally take a deep breath and go, I am so happy that I can speak here. And Trish and I just look at each other like, yes, of course, speak away. Like, and I've got goosebumps because and then, being in Sedona, and I'm in a small town, I'm just really here at my house a lot. I work from the home.
It's a blessing.
Total blessing. Total blessing. But so I'm not really exposed, I don't have cable, and so I'm not really exposed to the fact how people are feeling in big cities and how they're feeling. I see it playing out, but when I meet them and then they say, "Oh, I'm so glad that I can finally have a discussion," I'm like, "Oh, like this is a lot of people's reality."
And I just want to add to that I actually have some mutual friends. Like, we're all friends. There's two of them. I'm not going to say their names, but we're all three girlfriends, and they were scared to tell each other how they've been feeling politically. And me, I'm very open. I don't like to mince words. I don't necessarily. I don't want to be aggressive about it. But if I'm asked or questioned about my opinion, then you better be ready, because I'm going to give it to you.
Which is what I've always loved about Sarah. And what I loved about Trish is when I meet people that have that same core value, wisdom, strength, and magic right here in this little firecracker of a package. And I think that that's something that when I recognize it, I am so encouraging I love that about
I think that it could, I know how it is refreshing, and I also see how people are opposed to it. And I'm one of those people where I'm like, listen, this is me, and if you don't like it and I'm too abrasive or that's okay. You don't have to like me. I am very confident. I love myself. I have a lot of friends and people who love me, and I'm still not going to be somebody else to make you feel more comfortable. But my thing with the friends is it took me talking to one of them, and they're like, oh my God, I've been feeling that same way too. And then I was like, oh yeah, I talked to her, and she's like, wait, what? She does? And I was like, yeah. And she's, oh my God, I know she felt that way. So then I went to the other girl and told her, and she's like, oh my God, she feels that way too. I'm like, yeah, like, why? You guys are scared to even have a discussion. Like, that scares me. People are so scared.
That's
And,
unfortunate.
when we're done, I just want to leave with one.
Yes, please.
Wrap it up for us.
He's
Yeah.
gonna wrap it up with
And we'll put links down in the YouTube for how to get a hold of.
I have something in the works, but right now I'm still just kind of.
But to the books that
moving.
we've talked about,
Yeah.
and so we'll and then we'll have Sarah back too.
So he gave this speech on July 9th, 1975, and I'm just gonna read the first paragraph. And this is how he starts the speech. Is it possible or impossible to transmit the experience of those who have suffered to those who have yet to suffer? Can one part of humanity learn from the bitter experience of another, or can it not? Is it possible or impossible to warn someone of danger? How many witnesses have been sent to the West in the last 60 years? Well, this is in 1975, so add 45 years. So in the last 105 years, how many waves of immigrants, how many millions of persons, how many people have to warn about the dangers of communism? Is it possible to teach you guys something? Is it possible or impossible? Is it not possible to share history and shed some light on the way that a system works that maybe you don't quite fully understand? Because there are people who have been speaking out against us for 105 years, and it's still pervasive, it's still subversive, it's still here, and it's knocking. It is getting its foot. Marxist ideology it's shoved its foot in the door, and once it gets a toehold, man, we are in trouble. So this is my platform. I am trying to warn people of the dangers of a dogmatic ideology. And I believe that people can learn. I believe that people can change with new information or old information that somehow tells the future, you know? So I think it's possible.
And we totally support you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your wisdom, strength, and magic with us today.
Yes. And all the pups. And
Yeah, all the messages.
so this, again, a new series that we are going to continue with, Justice for All. Divine timing, divine mission, true north, truth magic,
Sovereignty.
sovereignty, stay
Magical.
We love you all very much, and thank you for tuning in here today on our podcast here on Spotify, as well as for those of you that were able to join us here on YouTube. If you would please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you are definitely in the loop when we go back on. We sure do appreciate your support. And together, let's continue these roundtable discussions and work for solutions, not to feed the divide and
Peace.
conquer, and peace.
The sovereign piece of me.
Yeah.
Which is our mission statement at Unicorn Way. Okay, love you very much. Have a beautiful day. And until next time, everyone, stay magical. Can you turn off the, so that I don't lose this? No.
You guys were all so
I don't know
good.
which button it is.
Up on top where it says end broadcast. Okay. And I can edit this out. Yeah.
There we go.